While Thanos might be the most well-known and famous for wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, heroes have also attempted to brandish this weapon in the past. Some with heroic intentions and some with perhaps even more villainous intentions than Thanos himself. The Silver Surfer gains the power of the Infinity Gauntlet in a what-if story from the 1989 series featured in issue 49 of that series. What if Silver Surfer possessed the Infinity Gauntlet? Well, he would obviously try to use the power for good. He ends up being lifted up into godhood because he wields such awesome power and attempts to turn the universe into a paradise, eradicating hunger and disease for all races across the cosmos. Also, fun fact, did you know that back in the day when you had the Infinity Gauntlet you were considered a god and that was like part of the story? That was a thing. Silver Surfer also makes Death a more approachable hot lady, so that when people die they will not fear her but cherish her instead. I mean, I personally think Death was already hot before, but I guess now she's more hot, so that's great. In the end, unfortunately, even Silver Surfer becomes corrupted by the Gauntlet's power. However, our heroes have a solution for that and introduce Shala Bal, Norrin Radd's lost love, into the mix. She manages to be able to level with Norrin and even convinces him to renounce the power, saving the world with his final sacrifice. And her final sacrifice too, because they're both like, okay, well, we're just gonna die now, bye. Number 9. Nebula. Nebula is a complicated character. She's not really a full-on villain and she's not really a full-on hero, but I feel like her portrayal by Karen Gillan in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy series has helped us to see her more as a villain worth redeeming and moving more into the realm of hero than anything else. And in honor of that, I'm going to count her as such for the purpose of this list. One of the last times I was reading a sort of hero Nebula story was when she teamed up with Thane, Star Fox or Eros if you will, and Trico Slatteris, the champion of the universe, to seemingly defeat Thanos. In reality, Thane was using them for his own means, and when Nebula found this out, she attempted to defeat Thane herself. In the comics, she was one of the characters to get her hands on the Infinity Gauntlet during the events of the Infinity Gauntlet story. She ended up being the really big bad when she took the gauntlet from Thanos and then had to be defeated thereafter. At that time, Nebula was pretty much a villain, so yeah. But like I said, we can kind of consider her a hero, so she was a villain at the time, but she's still a hero. Does that make sense? I'm counting it, whatever. It's my list. I decide who stays. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like this where we talk about who's wielding the Infinity Gauntlet and what they did with it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. I personally would love to see like an alternate Thanos Infinity Gauntlet list as well. I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know if we have enough alternate Thanoses for that list, but I think it would be cool if we could do it. Number 8. Deadpool. Surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly if you're familiar with the character, Deadpool also has wielded the Infinity Gauntlet before. In this case, he ended up getting it from Thanos when he pulled a bait and switch, swapping out the real gauntlet with a fake. Deadpool then planned to use the gauntlet to roast the Marvel Universe, but instead got celebrity roasted himself by host Howard the Duck and a slew of other heroes, villains, friends, allies, and even lovers. In the end, however, Deadpool breaks the fourth wall to do some roasting of the audience and ultimately returns the gauntlet to its rightful owner. Thanos, of course. What did you think? He was gonna give it to someone else and save the day? This is still Deadpool we're talking about. Also, I'm pretty sure the issue this story comes from, issue 45 of Jerry Dugan's Deadpool run from 2013, is also where the Thanos Copter originated. Either way, if you're a fan of Thanos Copter, it is in there too. Thanos Copter. Thanos is flying around in it. Number 7. Gamora. Gamora ended up using the Infinity Gem's combined power to fold the universe in half, creating Warp World in the comics. Warp World contained only combined Marvel characters who were all composed of 2 different souls, like Emma Frost and Wolverine, who were combined together to create Diamond Patch, or Weapon Hex, a combination of Laura Kinney aka X-23 and Scarlet Witch. Technically, Gamora didn't use a gauntlet specifically to do this, but she did utilize the power of all the gems, which makes it, I think, close enough for her to rank here. At the time, what she was doing was, well, pretty villainous, but Gamora in general is considered to be a hero in modern comics especially. Well, when she's not stealing gems and folding the universe in half, of course, which is also from modern comics. To check out this story, you'd want to check out Infinity Wars, so go do that because Warp World is cool. Number 6. Black Panther. T'Challa was the one to use the Infinity Gauntlet against God Emperor Doom on his own created version of Battleworld. Doom's created version of Battleworld, not T'Challa's, just to be clear. This reality was a patchwork one created by Doom after the inevitable destruction of the Incursions. Doom faced T'Challa and Namor, the former of which also came wielding the Infinity Gauntlet. While initially T'Challa succeeded in defeating Doom, he inevitably regenerated and then destroyed the Infinity Gauntlet in turn. However, while Doom beat beat Black Panther even with the Infinity Gauntlet. It was then revealed that this had all been a part of a master plan and was intended only to distract Doom, which evidently had pretty much worked. God Emperor Doom was so OP though. RIP God Emperor Doom. Doom's still around though, so I wonder if he remembers that. No, he probably doesn't remember that. I think it all got wiped. He just remembered that he killed his arch nemesis, and he was like, I'm happy now. Also, I'm not scarred. Number 5. Mr. Fantastic. Reed Richards aimed to wield the Infinity Gauntlet, collecting the gems and assembling them all with the intention to destroy them and prevent anyone else from gaining their dangerous level of power. He used his own group of banded together heroes to find the gems and collect them. Unfortunately, his plan did not work, and he had this secret superhero brainiac group, the Illuminati, instead become the protectors of the gems, which were then split up. Each one of them was given one to hide in the universe so that the gauntlet could never be reassembled and used against them. Of course, this didn't end up being a permanent solution to that problem because these are the Infinity Gems, and no matter which way you slice it or split these gems up, they're eventually going to be used again by someone in the future to do some kind of good or ill. Usually though they're used for ill. So yeah. And no matter how hard you try to hide those Infinity Gems, people go and find them. Number 4. Hulk. Obviously one of the heroes we can't leave out considering how mighty he is and how important his time with the Gauntlet was in the MCU is the Hulk. The Hulk wore the Infinity Gauntlet and was the one to use it to bring everyone back in the MCU. If you were wondering how a big, not super intelligent berserker like the Hulk managed this feat, managed to stay focused, this was actually during the time in the MCU where Hulk was more in balance with Bruce Banner. The two beings were more merged at this point and basically became Professor Hulk. Hulk wore the gauntlet in the MCU during Avengers Endgame and used it to bring back everyone that had been snapped out of existence, undoing what Thanos had done in the previous film, Avengers Infinity War. In the comics, in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, the alternate Hulk of that Earth also wielded the Infinity Gauntlet, or rather the Infinity Gauntlets, as in that universe there's 2 of them, but that's a story for another list. Number 3. Iron Man. Someone that has been immortalized when it comes to his use of the Infinity Gauntlet, or Iron Gauntlet if you rather, in the MCU is Iron Man. Iron Man snapped past Thanos and his army out of existence, which resulted in the heroes winning the day in Avengers Endgame. Thanos returned to try and set straight what the heroes were trying to fix in their universe, which was his plan to eliminate half the population. Hulk had successfully snapped back those who had been killed off by Thanos' initial snap, but now Tony Stark was fighting to save the world against a past Thanos who had followed them there to once again follow through with his future self's and really his own self's plan. In using the gauntlet, however, Tony gave up his life as it was so powerful a weapon that using it killed him. Also, he kinda had to put it in his suit, and I don't know if his suit was properly wired for all that power. This made Iron Man one of the greatest heroes eternally, but not one of the greatest Eternals, because that's a whole different group of heroes. Tony has also briefly wielded the Infinity Gauntlet in the comics, but it went quite a bit differently for him in comparison. Once again, a story for another list. Number 2. Captain America. Captain America actually also wore the gauntlet, in the comics at least. He attempted to use the gauntlet to keep Earth 616 safe during the incursions. This was a dangerous time in the comics when basically different realities were colliding and thereby destroying one another. Captain America attempted to use the power of the Infinity Gauntlet to push away the impending Earth and help prevent their collision. However, he failed in his attempt, and instead all of the stones on the gauntlet were seemingly destroyed except for the Time Stone. Probably one of the most useful stones too when you think about it in terms of getting the other Infinity Gems back at some point. I feel like there's gonna be someone that's gonna be like, you're calling them gems and stones. What is it, Amanda? Look, they're stones I'm pretty sure in the movies, they're gems in the comics. Gems, stones, it's all the same thing. They're rocks. They're infinity rocks, that's what we should call them. Number 1. Adam Warlock. Probably one of the most famous people to wield the gauntlet when it comes to comic book heroes from Marvel is Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock is often seen as a sometimes ally, sometimes opponent to Thanos, and in this case, he was kinda both. He ended up initially joining the heroes during the events of the Infinity Gauntlet in an attempt to defeat Thanos in the comics. However, they failed. When Nebula, who was known only as Thanos' granddaughter at that time, usurped Thanos, taking the power for herself, Thanos and Adam Warlock decided to team up to put a stop to her. This is when Adam Warlock got his hand on the gauntlet. However, after ascending and becoming a god thanks to the gauntlet's power, as I said that used to be a thing, he was instructed by the Living Tribunal and convinced to basically disassemble the gauntlet, hiding the gems with those that he trusted to protect them, one of which remaining with him, the Soul Stone.
In at number 10, Ultimate Marvel. In the Ultimate Marvel universe, the Infinity Gems have a completely different narrative than the 616 universe. Now for starters, there's 2 Infinity Gauntlets, each equipping 3 stones. Rather than Thanos trying to get his big purple mitts on the gems, in this universe it's Kang the Conqueror who wants them, alongside with the Hulk, Reed Richards, aka the Maker in this universe, and Quicksilver, all of who come together and concoct a plan to steal the 2 Infinity Gauntlets. They managed to do it too, destroying the Triskelion in the process. There's also 8 gems instead of 6, one of which is found to be lodged inside of Tony Stark's head. The Maker forcibly operates on him, taking out the sentient tumor in his brain, which turns out to be the stone. Luckily, this universe's version of the Avengers, the Ultimates, are able to stop them, causing the gems to shatter and leaving the gauntlets useless. In at number 9, Marvel vs. Capcom. The Marvel vs. Capcom video games eventually integrated the stones into their franchise, and it provides a unique twist on how they're portrayed. While their powers are generally the same, the way in which they're used makes them a fun mechanic for players. For starters, in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes, Thanos is the only one to make use of the stones, using power, reality, soul, and space for his supers. But then, in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, the game incorporates the stones in a much more significant way. They grant your player character a specific enhancement based on which stone that you are using, all centered around the plot of Ultron and Sigma using the space and reality stones to merge their worlds into one. And themselves. You need to use the remaining stones to defeat them. Up next, number 8, the Infinity Mitten. Of course, we had to include a what if alternate reality on this list, or rather, a what the, which was kind of a spin-off of sorts from the What If series, and explored a more comical approach to the alternate realities and hypothetical questions in the Marvel Universe. It was a pretty short-lived series to say the least. Anywho, in issue 24 of What the, from 1992, is a parody of the 1991 Infinity Gauntlet comic, the series that the MCU Infinity War film was loosely based off of. Here's a look at the cover. As you can see, the mitt reads, "Cosmic Cook," and Thanos holds a pair of tongs which hold up Wolverine, all while he declares that he is the master of space, time, and barbecue sauce. He's also called Thermos in it, because all of the Marvel characters are silly parodies of themselves and have pun-filled names. The story still has the same narrative thread. Thermos, aka Thanos, uses the mitt to impress Mistress Death, wiping out half the universe. Feel like it would be a little bit cozier than the gauntlet. Or flexibility for your fingers, really. And at number 7, the Battle Realm Stones. For those of you familiar with the mobile game Marvel's Contest of Champions, you know the whole premise of the game follows Marvel's heroes engaging in a cosmic fighting tournament. The game does have a loose narrative as well, which throughout gameplay, new Infinity Stones are introduced to players. They're called Evolution, Genesis, War, Chaos, Nightmare, and Death. The game doesn't give us a ton of context on them or what exactly their full scope of powers entail, or where they've been hiding in this alternate reality, but they still grab the attention of a certain mad titan who attempts to collect them and use them. And at 6, Ego. Let's move on to a specific alternate stone now. The Ego Gem. White in color, this one was hidden in a realm called the Ultraverse, and contained the essence of Nemesis, a being who was omnipotent and had shattered herself into the Infinity Gems, and spread them out across 2 universes, because she had grown tired of existence. The stone took control of Eternal Circe, and when she came across Loki, who was attempting to steal all of the other 6 stones, the stone recreated Nemesis. Now fun fact, Nemesis is sometimes believed to have been the Infinity Gems in humanoid sentient form. So all in all, Ego is a stone that contains the consciousness of Nemesis. And at 5, Rhythm. Rhythm is a bit more fun than our previous number. For starters, it's actually a fake gem. It appears in the video game Marvel Superhero Squad The Infinity Gauntlet, and was created by Loki. Thor and Falcon attempt to retrieve the stone from the trickster god, only to discover that it's fake, and has been used as a decoy to trick the Avengers in order to keep them away from the 6 real stones. Loki uses the stone to hide himself and the Enchantress inside of it. Now prior to this, the Avengers decided that they needed to acquire all of the gems before Thanos did, a conversation that Loki, along with Dr. Doom, Silver Surfer, and Nebula, listen in on. Moving on to number 4, the Build Gem. This gem is kind of similar to our last number. It also appears in a spin-off alternate reality, but this time one inhabited by LEGO Marvel Superheroes. In 2017, a short was released online called LEGO Marvel Superheroes Guardians of the Galaxy: The Thanos Threat. The plot revolves around the Guardians needing to deliver an Infinity Gem called the Build Stone, which allows its user to build any weapon. They need to deliver it to the Avengers, but Yondu and his Ravagers get in the way, followed by Ronan the Accuser and Nebula. Essentially, it roughly plays the plot plot of the first Guardians MCU film, except turns the Power Stone into the Build Stone, which I guess is a little bit more fitting for its LEGO universe. Up next at 3, the Forever Glass. Deviating a little bit for this number from talking about individual stones and returning to a set of stones, or rather, something called the Forever Glass that appears on Earth 4290001, otherwise known as the Earth that's home to the Great Society. What's that? Well, they're a group of superhumans that banded together to fight off alien invaders after the previous hero team of that Earth, the Archetypes of Justice, were defeated. Now, one of the ways that they defend the planet was by using something called the Wishing Cube, the equivalent to the Infinity Gauntlet in this universe. It has 6 planes of Forever Glass, which is the equivalent to the 6 stones. But their universe is ultimately destroyed thanks to Earth 616. Appearing in the 3rd volume of New Avengers, their reality is on a collision course with that of 616's, and Namor pulls the trigger on them, activating an antimatter injector to destroy them before they destroy the 616. And fun fact, on this alternate Earth, many of the characters are actually a pastiche of DC comic characters. Oh, the lulz. And at 2, Death. Death is a much heftier stone in comparison to the likes of Build, Ego, and Rhythm. Well, maybe not Ego, but it's also known as the Mortal Stone. The Death Gem appears in the 2015 Infinity Gauntlet Limited Series as part of the second Secret Wars crossover event. In it, the Reality Stone is used by Nova, aka Anwin Bakian, to create a new gem called the Death Stone, which Thanos manages to get his hands on. But here's the kicker. When Thanos touches it, it corrupts him with black matter, turning him to dust after he assembled it with the other gems in the Infinity Gauntlet. This went down in Infinity Gauntlet Volume 2, Issue 5. And finally, in at number 1, Continuity. Last but not least, we have the Continuity Stone. This one is owned by Deadpool and appears in his self-titled solo series. The Continuity Stone gives characters the power to talk to their comic book writers. Yeah. According to Deadpool himself, editors tremble before its limitless power to retcon Marvel Comics history with but a whim. So yeah, it's a bit more of a parody stone, and allows for more of Deadpool's wonderful meta dialogue and breaking of the fourth wall. But it's still an intriguing addition to the stones nonetheless.
Number 10. The Power Stone. The Power Stone, red in the comics and purple in the movies, gives the wielder increased strength and durability, enhancing any powers already held by the person. If they will it, it can even grant any other power in existence, rewarding more creative wielders. It can provide power to devices or even boost the strength of the other Infinity Stones. In the MCU, the Power Stone is represented by the Orb from Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 9. Time Stone. The green Time Stone grants its user control over time itself. It allows one to stop time, change the rate at which it flows, cause others to rapidly age, see into the past or future, and even travel through time. When used in conjunction with the other gems, it can cause the user to exist at all times at once. In the cinematic universe, the Time Stone is found in the Eye of Agamotto seen in Doctor Strange. Number 8. Space Stone. The blue Space Stone allows a wielder to manipulate space however they want. It lets the user teleport themselves or others anywhere, breaks the laws of physics, and when used with all the other gems, lets the user exist at all places in the universe simultaneously. We're starting to see why these stones are so scary. In the MCU, the Space Stone is actually the Tesseract, seemingly possessing some of the capabilities of the Power Gem in the comics. Number 7. The Soul Stone. The Soul Stone interacts with the souls of others. It can see into them or even grab them and suck the soul into a pocket dimension inside the gem. The wielder can then access the memories and skills of those in this wonderful dimension called the Soul World. The stone is actually sentient, craving the souls of others, which is something that actually rather disturbed the usual bearer of the Soul Stone, Adam Warlock. As far as we know, the Soul Stone hasn't been seen in the films, although some believe that the orange planet seen in the Infinity Wars trailer could be the Soul World, the embodiment of the gem. We'll have to wait to know for sure. Number 6. The Reality Stone. The Reality Stone, yellow in the comics and red in the movies, is largely thought to be the most dangerous of the stones on its own. It gives the user the ability to alter reality at will, from changing laws of physics to reviving the dead. It can even be used to perform incredible feats like creating whole worlds or even altering reality across the universe. In the films, the Reality Stone was turned into a liquid weapon called the Aether by Malekith, and was given to the collector for safekeeping. Number 5. The Mind Stone. The Mind Stone, blue in the comics and yellow in the movies, grants its user powerful psionic abilities, as its name would entail. It grants the wielder great telepathic and telekinetic abilities and increases their mental powers. When used with the others, it can link the wielder of the gems to all the minds in the universe. Not too shabby. In the MCU, the Mind Stone was in Loki's scepter, but now resides in Vision's forehead. For now. Number 4. One gem to rule them all. One alternate reality had a much more Tolkien-esque Thanos-esque vibe to the Infinity Gem lore. Earth 93060 had a 7th gem called the Ego Gem, a golden gem that contained the essence of the omnipotent being Nemesis. This gem possessed Cersei, a former Avenger, and when Cersei met Loki, who had the other 6 gems, Nemesis came back. It took the combined might of the Avengers, Ultra Force, and alternate reality versions of the teams to take her down, so hopefully we can avoid that in the MCU. Speaking of Nemesis, number 3. Origin. One thing non-comic fans won't know is where the heck these gems came from in the first place. Well, remember Nemesis? Turns out it was actually a primordial entity, actually the only sentience in the universe at one point. Some descriptions even describe Nemesis as the universe itself. Turns out it got too lonely and tired of being the only thinking being around and ended its own life, splitting into the Infinity Gems. This is why they're much more powerful than when brought together, because they give the more complete power of Nemesis. Number 2. Adam Warlock. When talking about Thanos and the Infinity Gems, you're bound to see Adam Warlock referenced a few times, and some don't really know why. Well, in the comics, Adam Warlock was killed, but was later revived and taught to act properly by the High Evolutionary. For some time after, Adam was in possession of the Soul Stone, which contained a hidden dimension inside called the Soul World, into which Adam could put souls of others. These adventures would pit Warlock against Thanos and others a number of times. Number 1. The Infinity Watch. In the comics, each of the Infinity Gems was eventually given to protectors selected by Adam Warlock, called the Infinity Watch. They were chosen either because they were unable or unwilling to use the gems properly. Drax the Destroyer was given the Power Gem since he lacked the mental capacity to use it properly. He thought it was a jelly bean and ate it. The Space Gem went to Pip the Troll, the Time Gem went to Gamora, the Mind Gem went to Moondragon, and the Soul Gem stayed with Warlock. Most surprisingly, he gave Thanos the Reality Gem, thinking that if anyone was smart enough not to use the gem alone, it's Thanos. That definitely won't backfire.
And at number 10, the Reality Stone and Infection. Let's start off our list by talking about one of the lesser liked films in the MCU, Thor: The Dark World. Remember when Natalie Portman was in the MCU? I miss Natalie. Girl, the Thor franchise is way better now after Ragnarok, just come back. Anywho, despite your feelings concerning the film, it did give us a really solid glimpse at the Reality Stone, and some of the things that it's capable of. That includes infecting humans. Jane Foster, aka Natalie Portman, ends up finding herself in a dimension where the Reality Stone was hanging out in secret for thousands of years. When she gets close to it, it infects her with energy. Back when she's on Earth and a police officer attempts to touch her, her body explodes with energy, and it becomes clear that she has developed some sort of illness, one that mortal humans can't heal. So Thor takes her to Asgard, and then there's some cute little scenes with Thor and his fam talking about Natalie, and Lady Sif being all like broody and whatnot. Even the Asgardian healers can't figure out what's wrong with her, but lucky for her, Malekith, the film's evil dark elf antagonist, takes the energy from her, ultimately curing her. What exactly this kind of infection could mean later on down the line is still a big question mark, or whether we'll see something like that return to the MCU at all, considering it occurred in Thor: The Dark World, but you know, still nonetheless it's neat. And at number 9, the Reality Stone and Protection. While we're on the topic of the Reality Stone infecting people, let's take a look at the flip side of being stuck with a stone-inspired illness. It protects its host. When Odin realizes that Jane Foster has been bonded to the stone, he gives Jane and Thor the lowdown on how the Reality Stone can differ from the other Infinity Stones, or relics as he calls them. According to him, I quote, "It seeks out host bodies, drawing strength from their life force. Now despite making one ill, the stone doesn't want its host to be killed off, so it'll protect that host from external threats. This is why that energy exploded out of Jane when the police officer tried to touch her. It's also how those Asgardian guards got their butts whooped when they tried to bring Jane back to Earth using force." And at number 8, the Mirror Dimension. Back in Doctor Strange's debut feature film, we got to see the Mirror Dimension up close and personal. Then during the battle on Titan in Avengers Infinity War, Doctor Strange attempted to trap Thanos in the Mirror Dimension as a means of protecting the universe from him, and from him causing any real damage. But that tactic did not work. This is thanks to the Power and Space Stones. Thanos used the two of them to shatter the entrance to the Mirror Dimension, countering Strange's attack before they even got inside of the dimension, meaning that some forms of magic just cannot compete with the awesome power of the stones. And surely if he had managed to trap the Mad Titan there, having the Space Stone would have gotten Thanos out of there in a jiffy. In at 7, the Reality Stone being a copycat. Coming back to the Reality Stone for this number, and Thor: The Dark World. Now this number could possibly be chopped up to a plot hole or simply just bad writing. There's a reason why so many people don't like Thor's sequel film. In it, after Malekith gets the Reality Stone, many of the things that he pulls off, especially in battle with Thor, look jarringly similar to the kinds of things that the Power Stone can do. Sure, the Reality Stone has the ability to alter reality, contradict scientific laws, and fulfill desires that normally would be deemed impossible, but in Thor: The Dark World, it really acts as a copycat stone of sorts. And number 6, Wake Up. Yet another fun little thing the Reality Stone can do. In Thor: The Dark World, I'm sensing a pattern here guys, the stone wakes up Malekith and his dark elves from their thousands of years of hibernation. How come? Well, That's actually a really good question. The Reality Stone at times has a bit of a mind of its own, doing things like selecting hosts or being loyal to previous users. Malekith back in the day wanted to destroy the 9 realms using the stone in its ether form, and got close to doing it too before Asgard intervened and defeated them. So he and a group of his Dark Elves fought back, killed off their own, and eventually slunk away into hibernation. The Reality Stone being active again seemed to jumpstart them, waking them up. And at number 5, Mind Stone entering dreams. Moving on to a different stone at this number, the Mind Stone. So the Mind Stone is able to access an individual's subconscious, and by extension, their dreams. It can also put characters into a dream state and manipulate those dreams. Now this occurred in the Ultimate Marvel Universe in the comics, in which Modi, the son of Thor and Hela, attempted to usher in another American Civil War by taking control of various characters, including his father, all while using the Mind Stone. While using it on Captain America though, he used the stone to send him to a utopian dream world as a means of distracting the hero. But Cap eventually broke free by breaking the specter that the stone was hosted in. And at number 4, the Time Stone and Resurrection. In most cases in works of fiction, regardless of whether or not it's in the Marvel Universe, meddling with life and death, specifically with resurrecting the dead, often comes with major consequences. But one thing we learned in the MCU in Avengers Infinity War was that the Time Stone is capable of resurrecting the dead, seemingly without major consequences. Or at least if it does have consequences, we haven't learned of them yet. This was the case at the end of the film, spoiler alert, but you really should have seen it by now, when Thanos uses the Time Stone to reverse time right before Scarlet Witch killed Vision, in an attempt to prevent the Mad Titan from getting his big purple mitts on the Mind Stone and completing his set of Infinity Stones. Thanos managed to go back in time just before Wanda is successful and then takes the Mind Stone out of Vision's body himself, killing Vision once again, but also claiming the last stone that he needed in the process. Up next, number 3, the Reality Stone and teleportation. You may think it's just the Space Stone that is capable of teleportation, but often because of the wide scope of abilities that each of the stones have, their abilities can overlap slightly. For example, we've seen in the MCU that the Reality Stone can be used for teleportation. This occurred in Thor the Dark World when Malekith, who was also awakened by the Reality Stone, uses it to teleport to dodge Thor's attacks when the two duke it out in the film. While it may not allow him to jump around to different dimensions or travel great distances, its teleportation abilities gave him an upper hand when fighting the Asgardian god. And at number 2, the Mind Stone's All-Access Pass. The Mind Stone has the ability to tap into the universal subconscious of all living things. That's because it is literally the manifestation of the universal subconscious. Give that a think for a moment. That's a pretty darn scary thing. So with power as massive as that, it makes sense that in the comics, it would be trusted to Professor Charles Xavier, someone who has experienced what it's like to communicate with multiple minds at once. Thanks to his powers, the Mind Stone can access every single mind in the universe all at once. Not only can it act as a giant speakerphone to spread a message to everyone in the universe all at once, but in combination with other stones, the Mind Stone could theoretically be used to manipulate and brainwash minds on a mass scale. Yeah, no bueno. And finally, in at number 1, pocket dimensions. Perhaps one of the coolest aspects of the stones, and one that hasn't really been explored a whole lot in the MCU, is that each of them have a pocket dimension that the stone has access to. We saw a bit of it at the end of Infinity War, when Thanos speaks to a young Gamora after he snaps. They're in the Soul World, the pocket dimension found within the Soul Stone. This led to major speculation that somehow Gamora is still technically alive, and also a theory that all the dusted characters were also alive, but inside Soul World. I mean, it would make sense considering she was sacrificed by Thanos in order to get that particular stone. Not sure about everyone else though. But the Soul Stone isn't the only one with a pocket dimension, as we mentioned. In the comics, in 2018's Infinity Wars comic event, we were introduced to the full scope of pocket universes tied to the Infinity Gems. The Time Stone has Ellipsis, a place that manipulates the flow of time for anyone within it. The Space Stone has the Vast, an endless expanse of empty existence that stretches into forever. Talk about an existential crisis in physical form. Ugh. Then there's the Mind Stone. It has the Mindscape, which allows the user to bring anything they imagine or dream of to life. It's also home to a race of individuals called the Sleepwalkers. Then there's the Power Stone, which has the pocket dimension of the Arena, which is essentially a coliseum of sorts where characters fight one another, which is ruled by Dynamis, who is the living embodiment of the power cosmic. And last but not least, we have the Reality Stone, home of the World Pool, which can be used to access alternate realities overseen by Archivist, the Chronicle of the Multiverse. What's super cool about the World Pool though is that all of the alternate realities are portrayed as an endless comic book collection. How very meta. Whether or not these other pocket universes will make their way into the MCU is yet to be known, but the potential is there, friends.
In the number 10 spot is where it came from. Why does this thing even exist and who made it? Well, it all started with Mistress Death noticing that there were more people living than in the land of the dead. Big no-no in her books. So she summoned Thanos and gifted him with the gauntlet with the agreement that he would essentially take out the trash. And then with a snap of his fingers, half the population of the universe is deleted. anything to impress his lady. Next at number 9 is its first human complete wielder. Although the glove has taken a turn on many hands, it was first put to use by a human by Tony Stark. This was during the Avengers Volume 4, Issue 12, when the Avengers were up against the villain known as the Hood. Instead of bringing his father back from the death like he fathomed doing, he used the gauntlet to send the Hood to prison and disperse the gems so the power may not fall into the wrong hands. Of course, it never really works out that way now, does it? In the number 8 spot is its limitation. The gauntlet is an extremely powerful device and can accomplish many things for the greater good or vilest evil, but it does have one big limitation. It can only work in the universe it was created in. This is because of the differences in cosmic makeup of each universe, similar to keeping a freshwater fish in saltwater and expecting it to thrive. So some people may get pretty frustrated with this, and others are thanking their lucky stars. Up at number 7 is Reed Richards. In New Avengers Illuminati, Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four comes into possession of a complete Infinity Gauntlet. The other members of the Illuminati fear he may be compromised by the power that was never meant for a mortal man, and prepare to subdue him. However, he turns out to be mentally stronger than they realized, and ultimately divvies up the gems between the other Illuminati members, and he didn't even try to wipe out a city or two before then. Where's the fun in that? Coming in at number 6 is Other Versions. Just like most characters, there are different versions of the Infinity Gauntlet, each working in their own universes, of course. For example, in the universe of Earth 1610, there are 8 Infinity Gems divided evenly amongst 2 gloves, a lefty and a righty. And in Earth 1947, aptly known as the Humorverse, there was a version first held by the villain Thermus, called the Infinity Mitten, which resembled a baseball glove with the power to subdue the Marvel Universe. Yes, these things exist. Next up at number 5, it appeared in DC. It's so well sought after that even DC villain Darkseid got air of the powerful gauntlet and decided to make it his own. This happened during the JLA Avengers crossover. Luckily for the DC universe, the Infinity Gauntlet, which Darkseid discovered on Apocalypse, did not work in this universe. It's interesting to note this happens because Darkseid was the inspiration behind the creation of Thanos, and looks like they share the same taste in gloveware. Up next at number 4, we have the animated version. The gauntlet has made appearances on screen in animation, such as Ultimate Spider-Man, Hulk and Agents of Smash, and Avengers Assemble. An interesting thing to note across these animated realities of Earth 12041 is that the glove only contains 5 Infinity Gems. The missing gem is the Soul Stone, and it's speculated that it was left out because the shows were for kids, and the concept of power over living and dead souls was a bit much to introduce to children. In the number 3 spot, Captain America once destroyed it. After the Reed Richards fiasco, the Illuminati came together and assembled the gauntlet once more because they needed to stop 2 worlds from colliding. Captain America was given the task of wearing the gauntlet and preventing the universal incursion, but the amount of power this required had the side effect of the destruction of the gauntlet and all the gems but one, the Time Gem, which disappeared instead. It had one job, man. Coming in at number 2 is its appearance in Thor. If you guys remember way back in 2011's Thor film, those with a keen eye may have picked up the appearance of a right-handed Infinity Gauntlet in Odin's vault. Well, according to Marvel Studios, there are 2 gloves in the cinematic universe. We finally got an answer thanks to Hela in Ragnarok during her stroll through the vault. Fake. What would we do without her? And finally, in the number 1 spot, it's nothing without its bling. It should be a given, but a common mistake is to say that the gauntlet is one of the most powerful items in the Marvel Universe. The fact is, it's anything but. Without the Infinity Gems, it is essentially just a kind of cool-looking glove. So why does it even exist? It's more of a convenient way to hold 6 gems while having free hands at the same time to destroy universes or whatever simple tasks one may want to accomplish.
Number 10. They were once a person. That's right, the gems were once part of a cosmic celestial entity who was alone in the multiverse. Cursed to live in a barren wasteland of space, the creature gave in to despair and killed itself, or rather simply ceased to be. Upon the cessation of existence, the gems were formed out of the residual energies left behind. Now this information was revealed pretty late in the game for the gems, as it was revealed in 1990 in Thanos Quest No. 2, when Thanos discovered the origins. However, these stones, originally called the Soul Gems, were first introduced into Marvel lore all the way back in 1972, and only one was presented, the Soul Gem. In fact, it wasn't until 1976 that Captain Marvel revealed that there were 6 gems total, a fact which remained true for a while. There was a 7th for a bit, but that's a tale for later on. Number 9. They have to exist. Now this completely contradicts the MCU, that being the Marvel Cinematic Universe's logic. However, in comic continuity, these gems are intrinsically tied to the multiverse and its creation, so they must exist for the universe to exist. This fact was recently originally discovered by Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards, in 2007, when he and the rest of the Illuminati set out to gather the stones so they could destroy them. Also, Reed tends to have the gauntlet across a lot of realities. So in this one, Reed takes the gauntlet and attempts to wish the stones out of existence, but finds he can't do it. The Watcher then arrives and tells him they have to exist. So instead of destroying the stones, he removes them from the gauntlet and divides them amongst the Illuminati. Which is good. Reed with a gauntlet is bad news for everyone. Number 8. They make you evil. Sorta. The Infinity Gems contain a lot of power and are fairly easy to wield, so the temptation to just wildly change things can be quite great. So they tend not to bring out the best in their wielders, especially those with some subconscious issues. For example, Sue Storm, or Sue Richards, who was transformed back into Malice by the Soul Gem. Malice is a dark part of her subconscious she keeps hidden. Probably came up as a result of tons of neglect from Reed. Reed turns despotic with the gauntlet too. They make the wearer very susceptible to temptation, as mentioned. This tends to be tried out as a plot point only when needed though. You know, for drama. Number 7. They're sentient. Now this may not be surprising to some as they were once part of a cosmic being, but these stones are not just inert objects that channel power. They're also drawn together. Part of why in the comics it's not too difficult to find them, even if fetching them can be a bit harrowing and take a bit of cunning. However, on top of that, the stones want to be used. For example, Adam Warlock once noted that the Soul Gem would gather souls into its soul realm on its own. I think we all need to stay away from the Soul Gem. Seriously, how much easier would MCU Thanos' job have been if the Time Stone just appeared in front of him like it did Reed during the 2007 arc? I'm telling you, the Marvel Universe itself, the very fabric of reality, wants Reed to be evil. Just let it happen. Number 6. They don't work in the DC Universe. Now some of you may be like, well of course they don't. Or Sasha, are you okay? You basic noob? Those are separate universes. Well, to that I say, never forget the crossovers of the 90s and early 2000s between the two comic companies. People remember the Amalgam Universe stuff, where the characters were merged into one, but often forget the lead-ups, where the characters fought or teamed up, or Jubilee's crush on Tim Drake. Well, the gauntlet found its way into the 2003 JLA/Avengers crossover, and Darkseid attempted to wield it. And well, nothing happened, thank goodness. Cause man, Darkseid is terrifying at the best of times. I don't think the multiverses could have handled him with a working gauntlet. Thankfully, the energy they need to work comes from the Marvel Universe, and they weren't there, so crisis averted. Number 5. They've changed colors. Now the colors of the gems have been subject to change, and in the comics they actually changed quite recently at the time of this recording. From the original colors of blue, green, pink, purple, red, and yellow. That being which gem is which color has switched. And the reason? Well, the most recent reason is the MCU. Post Secret Wars, and especially in Infinity Wars, the stones are now lined up with their film counterparts, so there's no more confusion. I'm always kinda like, why weren't they lined up in the first place? Probably because the Infinity War stuff was added down the line. I know people like to be like, it was always all plotted, but come on now. 4. They form combos. Since their reformation in the modern era, the stones now act off of each other, differently depending upon combination and also the person wielding them. So some stones work better together than others. Think of it like the emotion spectrum of the Lantern Rings. While that was going on, some boosted others and some were less effective. So the Mind Stone, which augments the mental/telepathic powers of its users, allows for better control over the Power Stone, but having a deep connection with the Soul Gem allows for better control over the Mind Stone. So if you were clever, you would only need 1 or 2 that augmented your own strengths to really do some damage. I mean, Reed knows what's up. He gave Professor Xavier the Mind Stone. Reed's a supervillain in hiding. The Venture Bros is the most accurate representation, confirmed. Number 3. The Reality Stone allows access to the multiverse. So the Reality Stone allows its user control and access not only to one's own reality, but to the reality of the multiverse. It's pretty trippy actually, like it could really mess you up. You could go full Psycho Pirate. Although in Infinity Wars, Captain Marvel used it to talk to all other versions of herself who also had the Reality Stone, so they could brainstorm to solve their problems together. You know who else convenes with themselves? Reed. Okay, I'll stop. Still, with that much scope, I'm not sure I'd want that stone to be honest. Number 2. Anyone can wield it. In the comics. So a huge plot point in the MCU is how the power of the stones are so great that they can destroy the user. Quill only survived as long as he did because of his genetics and the power of friendship. But in the comics, pretty much anyone could use it. The issue is more about whether one should or not, and the whole corrupting one's heart thing. Still, kind of upsetting when you think about, well, certain characters wielding it in Endgame. If this was a 616 universe, they'd be fine. Number 1. There are more than 6. Now some of you will be saying, whatevs. I know all about the Ego Stone and Nemesis and all that jazz, how it converged reality and then got broken up and absorbed into the other stones. Okay, well wait. There's more. There was also a Death Stone that dusted Thanos. It was created by the Reality Stone. There was a Black Continuity Stone that Deadpool got his hands on to talk to comic book writers with. There was a Rhythm Gem from Marvel Superhero Squad, the Infinity Gauntlet video game. And there was a Build Stone from the LEGO Marvel Superheroes Guardians of the Galaxy, the Thanos thread. So yeah, there's 6 now, but who knows, we can always make more. Writer and continuity's prerogative.